It's obviously been an eventful day, and it has not been an easy day. But I wanted to come here tonight and speak with you, dedicated, devoted members of the Liberal Party, because you, not me or any other politician, are the beating heart of this movement.
For that reason, today I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
Two high-profile cabinet resignations in 24 hours, a fall economic statement that really wasn't, and more Liberal MPs that are demanding his resignation. This is Canada under Justin Trudeau. Hello, everyone. I'm Adrienne BATRA. With me are Warren Kinsella and Brian Lilley. I want to walk through just the calamity of what unfolded on Parliament Hill on Monday, Brian, starting from that we'd heard that Sean Fraser, the housing minister, was resigning, to then fast forward to Monday when J Freeland, the finance minister, was supposed to stand in the House and present a fall economic statement with an eye-watering $62 billion deficit.
Yeah.
But then, Brian, she resigned and everything went to hell.
Well, 9:07 a.m., she posts an open letter, a scathing open letter on X, and that just sets off everything. Look, Sean Fraser resigning. The guy's been by Trudeau's side for about 10 years. He's got a very young family. He wants to spend more time in Nova Scotia, talk that he's going to run for the leadership of the Nova Scotia Liberals. You know, it kind of makes sense. It's one of those, yeah, I guess it's time to move on. J Freeland, there have been rumors that she was going to seek something in the private sector for a while now. Nothing ever came of that. She's been one of Trudeau's most loyal lieutenants. And then she drops this letter, which just rips him to pieces. His gimmick, policies that we can ill afford, how the public knows when we're working for them versus working for us, things like that, just tearing the prime minister apart, smacking him around on the way out the door. And it kind of threw the entire day into confusion. They delayed the lockup for the fall economic statement. Most journalists just left. It led to more calls for Trudeau to resign.
It's time for the Prime Minister to read the room, to listen to his colleagues, to listen to the electorate, to look at the polling that hasn't moved in a year. And I'm also hoping, because of Minister Freeland's bold move, that other cabinet colleagues now are going to step up and do the right thing finally, to tell the Prime Minister, like, this isn't about trying to readjust a little bit going into an election. We need a major overhaul.
Some of them that signed that letter, the 24 a couple of months ago, started coming out publicly, like Chad Collins from Hamilton. We're hearing that as many as 60 MPs want him to resign. And now you've got Donald Trump mocking all of this on Twitter. It's, if it wasn't bad enough that Canada already looks weak under Trudeau's leadership, to Trump, who is trying to, use these tariffs as a negotiating tool with us. Well, now he's mocking Trudeau, for the governor of the great state of Canada. That's right. For losing his finance minister, who was toxic and he didn't really like anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so Warren, let's go back even just slightly further. We had discussed just as early as late last week this tension that had been growing between Freeland and Justin Trudeau. And look, I think we all acknowledge a healthy degree of tension between the finance minister, whose job it is to say no, and the PMO is not necessarily a bad thing. But this has boiled over now to the point where, in Freeland's letter, which we're showing here, scathing, as Brian has already mentioned, it really is. She says that he'd asked her on Friday that she will no longer, that she should consider a new position. He wanted her to go do something with U.S.-Canada relations, no portfolio, no staff, no ministry. But she will no longer be finance minister. And it, again, makes sense when she was asked at a press conference on Friday why she was so upset in responding to that. And now we see what happens on Monday. She has written, as equally as scathing editorial as the Toronto Sun has ever written, indicting about Justin Trudeau. She laid it all out there, Warren, and I'm wondering, from your perspective, this whole notion of him clinging on, what is that all about, with the growing chorus of voices publicly now saying you've got to go, Justin?
Well, I've worked for a prime minister, and we have talked about this before. The one thing I know about prime ministers is if you push them, they push back. Mm-hmm. So I was not surprised in the slightest, to the point where I didn't even bother to watch what Trudeau had to say at the end of the day. He was not going to resign. Anybody who thought he was going to resign was dreaming in Technicolor. If you want a prime minister to resign, you need a period of calm and restraint and quiet. And so hopefully that's what we get over the holidays, where Christmas he can, talk to family and friends, and he has a shrinking number of friends. We can talk about that in a minute. And they say to him, look, it's all over. Just look at the single day. He had a cabinet crisis verging on a constitutional crisis. He had the Canadian dollar in the same 24-hour period dropping below 70 cents. He lost a held seat in Langley, was absolutely crushed in that seat. The Toronto Star editorial board called on him to resign. Former members of his cabinet calling for him to resign, like Helena Yasek. Like, it was a disaster of a day, but he was never going to resign yesterday. What we got to hope is that he moves on when it's quieter over the holidays. The thing that should make his blood run cold, obviously it was incredibly stupid. It was possibly one of the stupidest political things I've ever seen, and that's saying something.
You've seen a lot of dumb stuff.
And this one ranks up there. Friday, he gets not only on a phone call or face-to-face, on a Zoom from BC, tells her, oh, I'm canning you. I'm not going to, as you pointed out, give you a staff or a ministry or anything like that. I'm getting rid of you, but I still want you to do the fall economic statement on Monday. So, I think they probably realized now that that was a big mistake. But the thing that should make his blood run cold, more than the Toronto Star, more than us, more than anything that happened yesterday, she went to caucus. She went to caucus, and when she walked in, she got a standing ovation. J Freeland, I know many people in that room, a lot of them didn't agree with her policies. She got a standing ovation. That is a clear indication that Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, leader of Liberal Party Canada, has lost his caucus. That was an open act of defiance, where they're saying, we stand with her, we don't stand with you. That hopefully he saw and realizes the implications of it.
Well, I think he's been seeing a lot of things literally falling apart around him, Brian, but I don't think he cares. I have maintained from the beginning, even yesterday when everything was falling apart, he's not going anywhere. He is not going to let the plebes push him out. He's dug in, surrounded himself by people who only clearly are telling him what he needs to hear, that, oh, this too shall pass. You've survived worse. You've survived other issues. Let's get into the holidays and people will forget it and cool down. I don't know if that's necessarily the case this time around. It seems like there's too much momentum. But even if he were to take the proverbial walk in the snow, I don't think that he is going to be pushed out by anybody, least of which is J Freeland. And I think she may be poising herself for a potential leadership bid. But I just find it just all a bit insane, frankly, that he's pushing her to do the fall economic statement, which you reported on first out of the gate that the deficit's going to be $62 billion. Not a great financial future for our great grandchildren. But I think that there is some credit that should be given to Freeland to say, no, I'm not going to do that, even though she's been carrying the water for this government for years.
And that's why I will not give her very much credit. She's standing up for herself. She's standing up for fiscal sanity. She went along with all the craziness for years. She called Trudeau a strong feminist after he threw Jody Wilson-Raybould under the bus, Jane Philpott, Selena Cesar-Chavez. She was fine with all of that. It was only when they came for her that she had a problem, that she decided to stand up and get a backbone, which surprised me Warren and I were chatting on the phone yesterday. He said, I guess they just assumed that she'd accept this humiliation like all the others, that she was fine accepting. And then, as far as this fall economic statement, yes, $62 billion. But what is the single biggest issue, the single biggest threat facing Canada right now? It's the threat of the Trump tariffs. 25% tariffs unless you do something with your border. You can argue that we shouldn't have to do it, or you can argue that Trump is wrong. He's going to do this unless we do something. And in this huge spending mini budget, what did they allocate for securing the border? $1.3 billion over 6 years. That's a rounding error in this budget, $217 million a year. You may as well call up Trump and say, you know what, Donald, I thought about what you said. Make the tariffs 50% because I clearly don't care about the Canadian public.
Yeah, well, look, Warren, for years now, we know that Justin Trudeau is not a serious prime minister. He's not, with unserious cabinet ministers around him. And I find it interesting that his former babysitter, Dominic LeBlanc, came to save his hide again and agreed to be appointed to the finance minister position after what was reported that others had declined. Here in comes Dominic LeBlanc, who's been his strongest ally and has saved him on many occasions. I mean, is Dominic LeBlanc going to really want to wear this whole fall economic statement catastrophe with the numbers such as they are, and then potentially going into in the new year what will likely be very heavy penalties and tariffs slapped on the Canadian economy because we have a weak prime minister? Does LeBlanc really want to be the guy for that?
What amazed me yesterday is from Little New Brunswick, 2 cabinet ministers have 6 cabinet portfolios.
Crazy.
And but Dominic, I've known for a long time. We worked together in Chrétien's office. He is the Mr. Fix-It of this government, so I wasn't surprised in the least to hear that he was the guy who was brought in. But I watched his swearing in, such as it was practically in the entryway at Rideau Hall. And he, looked like a guy who was being fitted out for his suit, by the Undertaker. I think he knew precisely what he's getting himself into, but he's a team player. He's going to go along with it, but it's not fixable, the problem they've got. And by the way, I want to criticize my colleague, Brian Lilley. He said 62 billion. It was 61.9 billion.
I'll be issuing a correction.
I still beat the gallery from a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean Sea.
He was sitting on a recliner on a cruise ship, and he figured out what the number was going to be. So, and in fairness to the Trudeau guys, it's a one-time number, because if you look further out, they've got a contingent liability with the payment out for the indigenous lawsuit, the human rights lawsuit. So that's why it's so big in that fiscal, but it's still bigger than it's ever been, right?
Okay, but the current year, so it's last year's that was 61.9 billion. The current year is still going to be 48 point something,
which is past her
over 40,
which is past her projection by $8 million. So
8 billion, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bad situation for the country fiscally, and that was the point of her letter. I think, where she sounded for the first time like a fiscal conservative. She sounded like That's a blue liberal like me, where she sounded the alarm on the fiscal state of the country. And her point was, and she's right, is we obviously have to be united going into fighting these tariffs, as the premiers are. Premiers deserve some credit, as Brian has written, for coming together. But, we need to have a better fiscal position, because I believe he is going to do the tariffs. I don't believe he's faking it. He needs the tariffs to pay for his tax cut that he promised. He's going to do it. So we need to have a better fiscal position. That was the point of her letter, in terms of policy. And she's right. But Dominic LeBlanc, Justin Trudeau, they're not going to pull it off, not in time.
Well, Brad, we already knew in advance of what was supposed to be, a big fall economic statement for the Liberal government. We knew in advance that Freeland wasn't going to do the $250 checks. that was one of the biggest points of contention between her and Trudeau. The GST break is still went ahead, but the $250 checks was not something that that Freeland was too keen on. So we knew that was going to be canceled, so to speak. But I want to sort of shift this conversation to something more broad in terms of Trudeau himself. I mean, you covered politics for a very long time, probably longer than you'd like to care to admit. Have you ever seen a circumstance where two massive, monumental things happen with two of your cabinet ministers resigning? You're supposed to be presenting a false statement, and you don't say anything to the media, and then instead you go to a fundraising, a party thanking the fundraisers that night, and just like we're all critical of Trudeau's sort of intellect or lack thereof, but I'm trying to understand how this is he blissfully unaware? Make some sense of this.
You look at the video of him leaving his office in Langevin Block and going to his motorcade to go to that fundraiser. And he is having nasty stuff yelled at him, and he's just smiling away, just like when he walked into cabinet yesterday, smiling along like a bobblehead, looking like a fool. He does not look chastened. He does not look humbled. He does not look like someone who had a bad day. Is he just acting, blissfully unaware? Maybe a bit of both. Or he's delusional. He's got this messianic complex about himself that only he can save Canada. It's part of why I don't think he will step down, even with all of this. He believes he is here to save Canada. He is the Messiah come to rescue us from ourselves. So as far as a day like yesterday, I remember covering Paul Martin being fired from Chrétien's cabinet. That was pretty big. If memory serves, it happened over a weekend, though, because I remember being at a barbecue in the backyard in Canada and getting the call from the desk saying, "Hey, can you file?" My life hasn't changed that much in 25 years, Adrienne. Things happen and people call to say, "Can you file?" Martin gets fired. Manley is Minister of Everything. But it wasn't on a big monumental day. And it didn't happen with another cabinet minister. I can't tell you how many budgets and fall economic statements between the provinces and the federal government that I've covered, but it's a very large number. I've never had one almost canceled. I remember having two budgets in 1 year after 9/11. I recall lots of crazy things around budgets, but they delayed releasing this thing for ages and ages, and then nobody got up to read it. They just tabled it. Here it is. No one's going to speak to it, because they'd asked Frankie Bubbles, who is there's an order of precedence for every cabinet minister. If this minister's not available, here's their fill-in. This is Francois Philippe Champagne. They called him and they said, "Hell no, I'm not doing that." Then they looked at who the second, because there's always a second. You know who it was? Randy Boissonnault, who left cabinet and they didn't update the order of precedence. So, here's a hint. If somebody leaves cabinet, update your order of precedence. That was a complete disaster from beginning to end yesterday.
Warren, I think we can put a fork in this whole notion of Trudeau and the faux feminist thing, as Selena Cesar Chavez said. Let's look at the body count of women, her words, of women that Trudeau has taken out. Even Catherine McKenna, who was his environment minister for a period of time, has come out and said he needs to resign. Jody Wilson-Raybould, we've already mentioned her. Jane Philpott, we've already mentioned, and now we add Chrystia Freeland to that list. But I don't know if that aspect of it really plays much of a part with those sitting around still supporting Trudeau. But what I am wondering is about the NDP. About the NDP, who keeps saying, "Oh, he needs to resign." Jagmeet Singh says, "Well, Justin Trudeau needs to resign. All options are on the table."
I'm saying very clearly that Justin Trudeau has to resign. All options on the table. Thank you very much. Merci.
Whatever that means. Then we hear from a number of NDP MPs over the last 24 hours. So everybody's running in front of a camera, trying to get their voices heard and get their clips in. A number of Liberal NDP MPs are saying, well, if Trudeau is still around in February, March, we will vote to bring down the government. We've been wonder why it's February and March, Warren. Well, we know there's a big pension that's about to kick in for Jagmeet Singh in February. But what is the play here for the NDP? Is it this crass that it's purely just for that pension? Like, they're going to get destroyed in the next federal election if they keep propping these guys up.
No, I'm not sure they will.
Really?
And they can always count on their 15 to 20%. And if you look at the numbers right now and the seat projections, they're going to get more seats in the House of Commons than the Liberal Party. So I don't believe that. And I never believe it when people say they're broke. They always get money from the steelworkers, from Brian's communist friends in Hamilton. They always figure out a way to fully finance a campaign. And nor do I believe that Singh is doing it for a pension. I know a lot of conservatives believe that. The guy, as Pierre Poilievre himself pointed out, drives a Maserati. He doesn't need a friggin' pension. Why don't they accept the possibility that Jagmeet Singh is doing this because he supports Justin Trudeau, that they actually have the same policies? That, to me, is what the real issue is. I mean, in getting back to the first point you made about women, since the summertime, Justin Trudeau, the feminist, the guy who went to the Equal Voice conference on the Saturday after firing J Freeland on the Friday, the day before, this guy is not a feminist. This guy abuses women who say no to him. And not only is, he known for that, Jagmeet Singh is known for going along with that. Mm-hmm. So Jagmeet Singh's claim to be concerned about the plight of women and the position of women in public service, it's BS too. I think the NDP actually feel more comfortable with Justin Trudeau's style of liberalism, and then they know that they've got zero chance of getting anything done when Pierre Poilievre becomes prime minister, as he will. I believe they believe the same things. It's not about a pension. It's about belief. They believe in the same things.
Yeah, well, I think in part maybe Warren's because the Trudeau has pulled the Liberals so far to the left.
Absolutely.
It looks like socialism.
Absolutely.
So it's relative to the NDP. Okay, Brian, last word to you. Let's look forward. As Canada is in this crisis and there's chaos amongst the Liberals. In the new year, what happens?
If Justin Trudeau can find a way to just keep on trucking, as the Grateful Dead might say, he will. He is going to just try and whistle past. It'll be a bit like Costanza, except he won't quit. People will just think he's going to quit. And then he shows it back up for work as if nothing happened. What? Fired a finance minister?
Great
Constitutional
episode.
crisis? No. None of that stuff happened. He's going to try and just whistle past this. That's my view. Of course, events could change. Things could happen between now and when they come back. What's remarkable is all of this is happening. We're going into the Christmas break for Parliament. His cabinet and caucus are falling apart. The House of Commons doesn't resume until January 27th. That's a week after Donald Trump comes into office and starts kicking the crap out of us unless something serious is done. So kudos to the premiers for showing up with plans to deal with the border. Kudos to Doug Ford for going on CNN and Fox News and CNBC and doing the media rounds to make Canada's case that Justin Trudeau should be doing, but isn't. Because if we're relying on Trudeau, there's not much hope come January 27th when the House returns and he pretends that he is still in control of everything.
Well, Justin, have a look at today's front page of the Toronto Sun. It's Trudeau-over. Well, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and let us know what you think in the comments below. And go to theTorontoSun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.